Welcome once again from St Lawrence Jewry Church. Today is the fourth Sunday after Trinity, and one of our Bible readings is from Matthew chapter 11. It contains some wonderful phrases that I wanted to draw to your attention. Jesus says in the context of this passage, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." And then a verse later on, he says, "My yoke is easy and my burden is light." Lockdown has put new and different burdens onto all of us. We've had to learn to live in new ways, to work in new ways, to socialize in new ways. And this can bring with it all sorts of stresses and strains. Indeed, there is talk in the news this very week, both about stress on clergy who are having to find new ways of being, but also on medical staff in hospitals who are working flat out to serve and who are finding themselves depleted of energy. The sort of burden that lockdown brings can include loneliness, lack of focus, poor sleeping patterns, bad concentration when we are trying to work. We need to be self-aware. We need to notice what's happening to us, because the beginning of dealing with it is always to at least acknowledge what it is that we are feeling. And as well as the sort of things we can do in terms of mental health, we also have our spiritual health to look after. And it is in that context that Jesus says, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." A little later on, he then goes on to say, "My yoke is easy and my burden is light." It would have been an analogy which his listeners would have easily understood. If you wanted to plough your field, you put a yoke onto, let's say, an oxen, and it drags the plough along and ploughs the field. And the yoke needs two particular qualities. First, it needs to be easy, that is to say, it needs to be comfortable, otherwise you damage the animal. And it needs to be light. There's not much point in using a yoke that is so heavy that the poor little cattle are worn out before they even start trying to plough. My yoke is easy and my burden is light. Interestingly, when Jesus is actually using this phrase, as you look at the rest of the chapter, he's actually taking a pot at the Pharisees rather than at the farmers. The Pharisees were following a pattern of religion that seemed to burden everybody with rules and regulations. And as Jesus gives us a promise, "Come to me, all who are weary, and I will give you rest," so he also gives a challenge to the Pharisees that they are overburdening people and that the new way of being in faith will not contain these endless burdens. But it comes also with a challenge, for the yoke is a piece of equipment that goes with work. As we receive the gift of Christ's rest, so we need to actually then go and put into practice in our lives the faith that we hold. "Come to me," Jesus says, "and I will give you rest. I won't bow you down with rules and regulations. I'll give you freedom and life." My prayer for you this week is that you would be aware of how you are feeling, that you would turn not only to those in medical care if you so need, but that you would also turn to our Lord Jesus Christ, and that you would receive from him the spiritual rest and peace which only he can give. Amen.